Hanna Maria Dohlen Opsahl is a doctoral student in strategy under the direction of Denis Lacoste. She is researching the internationalization of businesses in emerging countries. Her research will be presented at the Academy of International Business, and she will be a visiting researcher at Copenhagen Business School in fall 2016. You're working on a thesis entitled Internationalization of Businesses in Emerging Countries through International Joint Ventures. Can you summarize your research?
Yeah, so during the last years, more and more companies from emerging markets have started internationalizing. So this can be seen in two ways: the number of emerging country firms in international markets, and also of the amount of outward foreign direct investment. So since these firms are increasingly internationalizing, research has recently started to focusing on these firms. But today, the most part of the research focuses on the role acquisitions have in these firms' internationalization processes. These firms have often had a first experience with international partners for international joint ventures. So I want to look at the role these international joint ventures actually play in the internationalization process of these firms.
Can you describe an international joint venture?
An international joint venture is a new company that is created by two partners. When it's international, it's from two partners from two different countries, or from two partners from one country but in another country. So these companies, that can be two or more companies, they go into a foreign market and they create a new legal entity, so they create a new company. In emerging markets, that was the only entryway in several industries for several years. So, for example, when companies wanted to move into China or into India, they had to go to create a new legal entity with an Indian or a Chinese partner in these countries in order to enter the markets. One example can be when Walmart, for example, entered India. It entered through a joint venture with the Indian conglomerate Bharti Enterprises.
What do you mean by emerging market firms?
So emerging markets firms are firms from emerging markets. So these firms, or I focus on the internationalization process of these firms. So these firms have for a long time operated as low-cost manufacturers. So these firms have offered low-cost manufacturing and also low-cost labor costs to foreign firms, but these firms have now got more experience and they start to enter foreign markets. So I focus on these firms and now how they get more international.
Is there a difference between joint ventures and strategic alliances?
Yeah, so joint venture is a kind of strategic alliance. So strategic alliances can be joint venture, it can be licensing agreements, it can be partnerships, etc. The difference between, I would say, not a normal, but a strategic alliance and a joint venture is the creation of a new legal entity. So the two firms will actually create, two or more firms will create a new legal entity or a new company.
What role does research and development play in the internationalization of companies?
The role of research and development is quite important because these firms are latecomers. So they have to catch the gap they have with developed country firms, and they have to do that rapidly in order to compete in global markets.
Do you have an example of a company that's been successful with developing their research and development?
In India, we see several pharmaceutical companies and also the conglomerates such as Tata Group. They are increasingly investing in research and development.
How do you see the internationalization of companies in emerging countries changing in the next few years?
Today, what is often used to explain the difference in the internationalization of emerging country firm versus developed country firms is the institutional environment in these emerging markets. So emerging market firms, they have more difficulties, for example, investing in research and development because these markets often suffer from the lack of protection of intellectual property rights. So I guess that several of these emerging markets will develop in the coming years, so they will get better, more stable institutions. These firms will get easier access to financing, etc. So maybe the differences will be less between developed country firms and emerging country firms.